Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Donovan always believed he knew Cassandra better than anyone else in the world. They met at a contemporary art exhibition in Denver 14 years ago, when he was still an aspiring photographer trying to sell prints in modest galleries, and she had just opened her small interior design studio in a shared space downtown. The connection was instant. Cassandra had a sharp eye for aesthetics and understood composition and balance intuitively, and Donovan was captivated by the way she spoke about spaces and light with the same passion he felt for photography. They married 2 years later in an intimate ceremony in the mountains, just close friends and family, and built a life together that seemed perfectly balanced. They made the conscious choice not to have children, a decision that allowed them both to invest fully in their creative careers. Over the years, Donovan thrived, specializing in high-end wedding and corporate event photography, while Cassandra expanded her studio and began serving affluent clients throughout the Denver metro area. Their routine was comfortable, marked by late dinners where they shared the day's victories and frustrations, weekends exploring trails in the Rocky Mountains, and occasional trips to art conferences and festivals. Donovan captured the world through his lens, while Cassandra redesigned it through fabrics, colors, and furniture. They complemented each other, or at least that's what Donovan had always believed. But in the past 6 months, something had changed. Cassandra started working later, often locking herself in her home office, saying she was finishing complex projects. She declined Donovan's invitations to restaurants they used to love, claiming exhaustion. Solo trips to supposed design conferences became more frequent, always to different cities, always with vague itineraries that Donovan could never verify online when he tried looking up the events out of curiosity. She gradually updated her wardrobe with bolder, more expensive pieces and began wearing a different perfume, something woody and sophisticated that Donovan didn't recognize. He chalked it all up to work stress and the natural evolution of any long-term relationship. Trust had always been the foundation of their marriage, and Donovan refused to be the kind of husband who lived in suspicion. Then came the morning coffee that would change everything. It was an ordinary Thursday in October, sunlight streaming through the kitchen window as Donovan scrambled eggs and Cassandra checked emails on her tablet. She took a sip of coffee, took a deep breath, and said with rehearsed calmness, "Don, I need space. I think we should have an open marriage, or at least I'd like to explore other connections." Donovan nearly spat out his coffee. He turned to her, expecting to see some hint of a joke, but Cassandra's face was serious, almost clinical. She went on, talking about personal growth, not feeling confined by old labels, and how modern relationships could take different forms. Her words flowed too smoothly, as if practiced. Donovan's stomach churned. He asked where this was coming from, if something was wrong between them. Cassandra looked away and vaguely mentioned individual growth and unmet needs. He tried to reason with her, reminding her they'd been together so long and had always talked about everything. She simply repeated that she needed freedom to rediscover herself. The conversation ended without resolution, with Cassandra leaving for her studio and Donovan standing alone in the kitchen, feeling the ground collapse beneath his feet. The entire day passed in a haze. Donovan had a photo session scheduled for the afternoon, a couple wanting engagement photos in a park, but his mind was elsewhere. Something about the way Cassandra had spoken, the calculated coldness of her words, didn't add up. This wasn't just an existential crisis. There was more to it. Around 3 in the afternoon, Donovan made an impulsive decision. He canceled the session, invented an excuse about faulty equipment, and drove back home. Cassandra's car was in the garage. She should have been at her studio until 6, her usual Thursday routine. Donovan's heart raced. He entered quietly through the front door and heard muffled voices coming from upstairs. It wasn't the TV. They were real voices, one deep, masculine, mixed with low laughter. Donovan climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open with his fingertips and saw the worst nightmare he didn't even know he had. Cassandra was in bed with a man Donovan recognized immediately, Blake Morrison, a wealthy businessman who'd hired her studio 6 months earlier to renovate a mansion on the outskirts of Denver. Donovan remembered him because Cassandra had mentioned the project several times, excited about the generous budget and creative freedom. What she hadn't mentioned were the secret meetings. They froze when they saw Donovan in the doorway. Cassandra yanked the sheet up in a futile gesture, eyes wide with panic. Blake, a man in his mid-40s with salt and pepper hair and a square jaw, frantically started getting dressed. Donovan, still wearing his professional camera around his neck out of habit, let instinct take over. He raised the camera and snapped 3 quick shots. The shutter clicks echoed in the tense silence like a court sentence. Blake muttered something unintelligible, finished dressing, and practically ran out of the room, stumbling down the stairs. The front door slammed seconds later. Cassandra tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Don, I can explain, this isn't what," he cut her off, his voice eerily calm. "You wanted freedom? Congratulations, you just got it. Happy early birthday." Donovan left the room, ignoring Cassandra's pleas, and went straight to his office. He connected the camera to his computer, transferred the photos, and sent copies to his personal cloud and email. Documented, dated, irrefutable proof. Then he picked up the phone and called James Cardwell, a divorce attorney whose wedding he'd photographed 2 years earlier. James answered on the 3rd ring. Donovan explained the situation in short, emotionless sentences. James told him not to do anything rash and said they'd meet the next morning to discuss next steps. Donovan thanked him and hung up. He went back upstairs, grabbed a suitcase, and started throwing clothes in. Cassandra appeared in the doorway, now dressed, mascara smudged across her face. "Don, please, we need to talk. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness, I don't even know what came over me." Donovan didn't look at her. "A moment of weakness? Cassandra, you asked for an open marriage this morning. That wasn't spontaneous. You were laying the groundwork." She tried to deny it, but her voice cracked. Donovan zipped the suitcase and turned to face her. "How long?" Silence. "How long, Cassandra?" She looked down. "A few months." The confirmation hurt more than catching her in the act. Donovan shook his head and left the room. He spent the night in a downtown hotel, unable to sleep, his mind replaying every moment of the past months, every trip, every late meeting, every excuse. Now it all fit together with cruel clarity. The next morning, he met James at a quiet cafe. The lawyer got straight to the point. The photos were solid evidence, and since there were no children and the property was jointly owned, the process would be relatively straightforward, though emotionally draining. James advised Donovan to avoid unnecessary confrontations and let the law do its work. Donovan agreed, but he had an idea he couldn't shake. Cassandra's birthday was exactly 1 week away. He wanted that date to be unforgettable. In the days that followed, Cassandra sent dozens of messages begging to talk, claiming Blake meant nothing, that she'd been seduced, that she was going through a crisis and had made a terrible mistake. Donovan didn't reply to any of them. He let her stew in uncertainty. He threw himself into work, accepting photo sessions he'd normally turn down to keep his mind busy. But at night, alone in his hotel room, the pain washed over him in waves. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the months of sustained lies, the coldness with which she'd asked for an open marriage while already cheating, the calculated manipulation. He'd given everything to that relationship, and she'd tossed it away as if it meant nothing. Anger and sadness took turns, but slowly, anger won out. He deserved better. He deserved truth, respect, and the chance to close this chapter in a way that made it clear he wasn't the one in the wrong. James moved quickly. The divorce petition was ready in 4 days, citing proven adultery with photographic evidence. Donovan also hired a private investigator to dig deeper. What he uncovered was even worse. Emails between Cassandra and Blake showed the affair had started in the second month of the mansion project, nearly 6 months earlier. There were romantic messages, exchanged photos, even vague plans about maybe building something together in the future. Donovan learned that Blake was twice divorced, known for dating younger women, and had a questionable reputation in Denver's business circles. Cassandra had gotten involved with someone who collected conquests like trophies. Donovan gathered everything, organized the evidence into a detailed dossier, and handed it to James. The lawyer whistled softly as he reviewed the material. "This'll be quick. She won't be able to contest it." Cassandra's birthday fell on a Thursday, exactly 1 week after the discovery. Donovan planned everything meticulously. He called her the night before, the first time he'd spoken to her since leaving home. She answered on the first ring, her voice anxious. "Don?" "You answered." "Thank you, I've been so worried." He cut her off. "Cass, I want us to talk. Tomorrow, on your birthday. Can we have lunch at home, just the two of us? Maybe we can figure this out like adults." She agreed immediately, hope clear in her voice. Donovan hung up and finished his preparations. On the morning of her birthday, he returned home. Cassandra was in the living room, visibly nervous, wearing a blue dress he'd always liked. She'd made a light salad and set the table carefully. She tried to smile when she saw him. "Hi. Thank you for coming. I know things are awful, but I still believe we can." Donovan raised a hand, signaling silence. "Before anything else, I brought you something. A birthday present." He pulled a manila envelope from his backpack and placed it on the table. Cassandra looked at the envelope, then at him, confused. "Don, you didn't have to open it." His voice was firm. She slowly opened the envelope, pulled out the documents, and began to read. Her face drained of color within seconds. Divorce petition. Attached were the photos from the discovery, printed emails between her and Blake, and a detailed timeline of the affair. Cassandra let the papers fall onto the table, her hands shaking. "Don, no. Please, we can work this out another way. I'll end things with him, I promise. This was just..." Donovan leaned across the table, his eyes cold. "Just what, Cass? Just a phase? Just 6 months of lies? You asked for an open marriage because you were already cheating and wanted to legitimize it. You thought I was dumb enough to go along with it while you kept seeing him." She tried to deny it, but he pressed on, his voice sharp. "Blake doesn't want anything serious with you. He's already contacted me, you know. Through his lawyer. He wants it clear he has no intention of pursuing a relationship. You were just another fling for him." Cassandra's expression crumbled. She began to cry, loud, desperate sobs. Donovan felt a flicker of something like pity, but he quickly suppressed it. She'd made her choices. Now she'd live with the consequences. He stood up. "You have 2 weeks to move out. The property is being appraised and divided according to the law. My lawyer will contact yours to sort out the details. Happy birthday, Cassandra." He walked out of the house for the last time as her husband, without looking back, ignoring her cries for him to return. In the days that followed, Cassandra tried everything: calls, messages, even showing up at Donovan's photography studio begging for another chance. He kept his distance, communicating only through James. The divorce moved quickly. With no children and irrefutable evidence of adultery, there wasn't much to contest. Cassandra hired a lawyer, but her defense strategy was weak. She offered to give up part of the assets to speed things up, desperate to put an end to the scandal that was beginning to spread. Because the scandal did spread. Blake, fearing his reputation would be tarnished by association with a married designer, subtly began telling Denver's business circles that Cassandra unethically mixed business with pleasure. Gossip traveled fast. Her clients started questioning her professionalism. 2 major contracts were cancelled. Blake's mansion project was abruptly handed over to another designer without official explanation. Cassandra watched her business, built over more than a decade, begin to crumble. She tried damage control, but the stain was already set. Denver, despite being a big city, had tight-knit social circles, especially among the elite who hired interior designers. Reputation was everything, and hers was ruined. Donovan, on the other hand, kept his name clean. He maintained public silence, refusing to comment on the divorce when asked. But privately, among close friends who knew the truth, support was unanimous. He was the wronged husband who'd acted with dignity. The divorce was finalized 3 months after the discovery. The house was sold, assets divided. Cassandra got less than she'd hoped for but signed everything without protest, emotionally exhausted. Donovan took his share, paid off their joint debts, and still had a considerable amount left. He decided to do something he'd always postponed: travel. He bought a one-way ticket to Europe with no fixed plans, just his camera, some clothes, and his newly won freedom. He spent a month in Italy photographing Roman ruins and Tuscan villages. Another month in France, capturing the golden light of late afternoons in lavender fields. In Barcelona, he met other photographers at a group exhibition and, for the first time in months, felt like he was starting to heal. Art became therapy. He began working on a photo series called Masks and Truths, exploring the duality between what people show and what they hide. The images were powerful, raw, honest. He submitted the series to an international documentary photography contest and, to his surprise, received an honorable mention. The exhibition traveled to galleries across Europe and eventually returned to the United States. When Donovan came back to Denver 6 months later, he was a different man, lighter, more centered, with clarity about who he was and what he wanted. He sold his old studio space and rented a larger one in an up-and-coming neighborhood. His career took off. Recognition from the photo series brought new clients, more interesting projects, and speaking invitations. He was busy, fulfilled, and genuinely happy for the first time in a long while. He met Alicia at an art opening, a curator with an easy smile and a passion for photography that rivaled his own. They started dating slowly, without rushing. Donovan no longer held naive romantic illusions, but he wasn't bitter either. He'd learned that trust was essential, but discernment was equally important. Alicia was transparent, communicative, and he realized healthy relationships didn't have to be complicated. They could be simple, honest, and reciprocal. Cassandra, meanwhile, didn't share the same fate. Her studio closed a year after the divorce. Without clients and burdened by mounting debts, she couldn't keep the business afloat. She tried freelancing but her reputation continued to haunt her. She moved to Boulder, hoping to escape Denver's gossip, and landed a job at a smaller design firm, in a role far beneath what she was used to. Blake, as Donovan had predicted, vanished completely. He blocked her number and avoided all contact. Cassandra was left alone, facing the consequences of her own choices. She reached out to Donovan a few times during the first year, scattered messages offering belated apologies or well wishes. He never replied, not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. That chapter was closed. 2 years after the divorce, Donovan was having dinner with Alicia at a cozy restaurant when he spotted Cassandra across the room. She was alone, absently scrolling through her phone, clearly waiting for someone who was running late. She'd aged, Donovan noticed, not in years, but in weariness. Her eyes had lost their spark, her shoulders were slumped. She glanced in his direction, their eyes met for a brief second. Donovan gave a polite, distant nod. Cassandra tried to smile but quickly looked away. Alicia, sensing the momentary tension, whispered, "Was that her?" Donovan nodded. "Was." Alicia squeezed his hand on the table. "Are you okay?" He smiled genuinely. "I am. Better than ever." And it was true. He'd walked through the fire of betrayal, the pain of discovery, the anger of humiliation. But on the other side, he'd found something far more valuable, self-awareness and the certainty that he deserved better. Cassandra had asked for freedom that fateful morning over coffee, and Donovan had given her exactly that, freedom to live with the consequences, and freedom for himself to rebuild a better, more authentic, more fulfilling life. Today, when Donovan looks back, he no longer feels anger, only indifference, the kind that comes when someone has fully healed. Cassandra was an important part of his life, yes, but she doesn't define who he is. The photos he took that day in the bedroom are archived somewhere, proof of a moment that changed everything. But he no longer needs to look at them. The best revenge, Donovan realized, wasn't public humiliation or a messy divorce. It was living well, thriving, and finding genuine happiness far from someone who didn't know how to value what they had. He gave Cassandra the freedom she asked for, wrapped in a divorce filing on her birthday. And in doing so, he set himself free. VV. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.